Listen up. There's no more excuses.
We're empowering those who want the hustle by exposing the status quo.
The days of ordinary are over.
It's time to crush mediocrity and start discovering your greatest potential.
Welcome to the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today, we've got a real treat. Our friend Luke Wyckoff is in the house. Luke is a fearless entrepreneur who turns good ideas and unmet needs into successful companies thanks to his unique leadership style and his knack for building top-notch teams. His passion for business, life, and people is infectious and inspiring. Luke is many things. He is the Chief Visionary Officer of Social Media Energy, founder of Anxiety Seminars, Fractional Chief Marketing Officer of Wyckoff Consulting, founder of Buy Safety Labels. He is a behaviorist and executive assessment at Z3 Talent, and of course, author, photographer, keynote speaker. Luke, welcome to the show. What did I miss?
No, I think you got most of them. I think you nailed a lot of them.
Nice.
And the fact that I don't sleep, that wasn't in the bio, but I tend not to have to sleep very much.
I think it's amazing you can miss anything.
Oh, Luke, it's good to have a fellow Ferris State grad and Lambda Chi Alpha alumni on the show with us. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are now.
Well, I was born at a very young age, and I think that's an important thing to start off with. It's been quite a journey. You know, it's the fun part, or the stuff that I always think is the story behind the story. Sometimes is a lot of fun. And I'm from a very, very small town in the middle of Michigan. When I say very small town, guys, I always like to ask people, how many people were in your graduating class? So, Chris, how many were in yours? Dustin, how about yours?
So mine was pretty small, relatively, I guess. I had 35.
I want to say we're somewhere in the ballpark of 300. And we're not in a big area.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, Dustin, I got you by 2, so 33.
Darn it.
It came from my small town. There's only 722 people in my hometown, and my great-great-grandfather started that town in the 1800s with about 16 other guys. And it's just been a family town that has grown up. It's called Sheridan, Michigan, very small town. But there's a lot of things to be said for growing up in a small town. My grandfather he had a lot of different roles and careers, but then he started a construction company, of which my father then took over that construction company. In the total of 68 years that business was going, they were able to build out most of Montcalm County, Ionia County, places around Greenville and other places in Michigan. And it's really cool today, guys, to drive around, especially like with my mom sometimes, and look and go, well, Dad built that, Grandpa built that, Dad built that, he designed that, and he built that. So you start to think about,
very cool.
You start to think about your legacy, right? You start to think about those things that you're going to leave behind when it comes to business. And growing up, I had the opportunity to work, obviously, in the construction industry with my dad and my grandfather. And I can remember my very first branding exercise. I call it a branding exercise, guys. And the way that this worked was it was on a Friday afternoon, and my job was to sweep up and clean up the job sites. And I probably was 14, 15 years old or so. And I'm sweeping up and I'm cleaning up the job site. And finally, I was just upset. I was pissed off, probably because I was just a teenager, right? And I put the broom down, and my grandfather came over because there's 2 ways to get things done on the job site. By the way, there's Frank's way and the wrong way.
Yeah.
And so Grandpa Frank would come over and he'd say, "Well, what are you doing?" I'd say, "Well, I don't understand why we're even cleaning this place up." I said, "We're just, we're going to come back in here on Monday morning and we're just going to trash this entire place out again. And that's exactly what's going to happen." And he would say, let me tell you why we clean this place up on Fridays. He goes, you know what's going to happen tonight on Friday night? I said, no, what? Teenager, no, what? What's going to happen, right? He says, the owner of this property is going to have a scotch. And then he's going to go have a second scotch. By the time he gets to his third scotch, he is already calling up his friends and saying, come over and check out my building. Come over and check out my my new house, right? My beautiful home. And you know what the first thing those people see when they pull up to this job site? I'm like, what? He walks me over. He's like, that's my name, Wyckoff. He said, whatever these people see or feel when they walk into this job site is my brand. So pick up that broom and get your ass moving. and so my first branding exercise, growing up truly was that you want to talk about hustle, right? You need to hustle.
Yeah.
You need to get that work done in a timely manner so that the place looks great, so that when the customer brings people over, the Wyckoff name has a very good connotation for those people who are going to see it. So that was my first branding exercise as a young guy. But my grandfather on the other side of the family was an attorney. So the entrepreneurial spirit really came from internal, where you've got both grandparents who were entrepreneurs, construction owner, attorney. And then my father, who took over the construction company, who was also an entrepreneur. So I had so it was kind of built in to me at a young age. But man, there was a lot of embarrassing moments too, having to work on the construction site, because you were the boss's kid, right? At the end of the day, you were the boss's kid. And I would grab like a big wheelbarrow of cement to be rolling it into a place, and I just dumped that stuff all off to the side. And I just remember looking at the guys on the job site, and they'd just roll their eyes and be like, frickin' boss's kid.
Yeah.
Right. What they didn't see were the lessons that were being taught to me later, right? About attention to detail, about being tenacious, which we'll talk about later as some of the success of how I hire people, right?
Yeah.
But that was one of those things where when you go to the genesis story, Chris, that going to the point of your question is, if you grew up in a small town, everybody knows everybody, and you have you've got a family business, right? You're working that family business, and you learn to bust ass at a very young age, and you get stuff done. You get stuff done. And things have to get done, or things don't get done on time, and then it's bad for everybody. But I
love the story about you talking about screwing something up as the son of a boss. So as another fellow, as I refer to it, as SOB, son of a boss, right? It's an interesting thing, because I worked in our business as a kid as well. For some reason, because I was the young kid for a period of time, they had me like involved in computers and IT. And I would like be in a remote location, and somehow I would shut down the whole company because I pressed the wrong button. Yeah. I quickly got kicked out of that job because it was clear my future was not going to be in IT.
Well, I have to tell you, unless the question comes up, it usually kind of gets glossed over. So now I'll back up a few minutes, but I'll take you past college. I'm a couple years out of college, and I'm fishing with my dad in Canada, and we're probably 2 days into a 7-day trip, and these are 10 hours of days on the lakes. You learn a lot about your dad, by the way, when you spend time like that. And I'd give him $1 million to have that time back. He's been gone 16 years, and to be able to go out and have him see any of these things that I built, over the last 16, 17 years, I just think he'd really get a kick out of it. But we're on the lake, and I said these words to him, because you're now thinking, okay, I'm third generation. I'm G3. I'm the next Wyckoff Construction owner, right? And I said, Dad, you know what I think we should do with Wyckoff Construction? And the look on his face was, oh crap. Let's just do it. And so for the next 30 minutes, guys, I just pontificated on all of these ideas and thoughts because I'm 2 years out of college, which means I freaking know everything.
Of course.
And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, we need to buy up property. We need to build mini malls. We need to lease this property back to these people. We need to be, this was in the beginning of the 90s, right? And I had all these ideas and things of ways we could grow the company. And let's turn it from Wyckoff construction to Wyckoff development. And let's do all of these ideas. And I got done with that entire thing. And I think the quiet time between me asking him, what do you think? And when he answered, it truly felt, it was probably only 3 to 5 minutes, but it felt like 9 hours. Right?
Yeah. And
then Dad gave me some of the best business words of advice that I ever take, and I still take it now at age 53. I bring this advice to you and to other business owners, and that is, he said, and I quote, "I like to manage my own headache."
I love that.
And which is the really, really nice way of basically saying, yeah, you're not taking over this company, nor really will you be part of it. As I like to manage my own headache, right?
Yeah.
And he and so that was another nice learning moment in the construction world. But I honored and really appreciated a lot of the things that they taught me, growing up. I mean, I can go through every grandpa-ism that I can remember and fatherism from those things. A man on his feet is worth 2 on his seat, right? I can sit here and just all day long, you measure twice, cut once, right? I can go through, I can just, they're all in my head, but every single one of them have an application to any business in any single area. And
yeah, for sure.
Then the man on his feet worth 2 on a seat just speaks to the hustle mindset. It speaks to it. You may not be on your feet, but you're running. Even if you're sitting in front of your computer, even if you're anywhere else, you better be up and running.
So Luke, how did you make that shift from there? You talk about kind of growing up around a construction business and, now in all your different ventures between, assessments and speaking and building companies and building teams and marketing and, you're in all these other categories.
Yeah.
How did you make that shift?
Well, the interesting thing, the speaking, there's two things that happened basically in the college years that were really important. And it's actually crazy enough when I hire kids out of college today, I am not looking at their grade point the way that maybe other schools will look at it.
Yeah.
Because I look at their resume and go, how active were you? If you were able to keep a B- average, but you were also on the rugby team, in the fraternity, you were part of the student council government, you were active in this, active in that, you were doing all these other things, and you were able to keep a B average, awesome. You'll be great in my company. If I see someone who was just heads to the stone ground A, that you got straight A's, you were great in college, good for you. What life skills are you bringing to me? And most of the time they're not. I don't, that's not something I look for. So when I go back to college and I start thinking about the college days, there's a couple things that were critical and important that helped me jump forward in some of the things that I've done today. One of the biggest ones was college debate. So I took a speech and communications class in college, and it was my coach, Gary Horn was his name. And the coach of the team pulled me off to the side after my very first speech in this communications class. He said, "I'd like you to take this debate class." I said, let's do it. I'd love it. I think that would be great. So I'm in the debate class. I get through the very first debate. He pulls me again off to the side and says, "I'd like you to join the team." And he at the time actually was one of the top debate coaches in the nation. And he paired me up with my partner, Mike Sargent, who would end up being one of my lifelong best friends. And he and I went on to have a 49-6 record, over my college career. And what's crazy is we beat all the big schools all the time. We'd beat Harvard, we'd beat Brown,
Yeah.
we'd beat a lot of the big schools. It was always the small, like little Southern Baptist schools who would just hand it to us. I just remember, isn't that funny how we remember the wins, but we really remember some of the losses.
That's exactly right. We beat 46, and I don't remember one of them, but I remember all the losses.
I can tell you every single one of the losses, who they were to. And, like John Carroll University, right? I mean, they were just raising Southern Baptist ministers. Those kids that get up and speak at age like 19, 20, it looked like they were just they've been behind the pulpit for 20 years.
Yeah.
And they would just let it rip. And we knew within 15 minutes of being into it, I'd look at my partner and be like, are you kidding me? Who are these guys? but it was that skill set, Dustin, that took me to a different level with public speaking. The ability to communicate, the ability to frame up an argument in a way that it later would help me in sales more than I ever thought it would. And so I had the ability when I was doing that. And then out of college, I started competing in some speaking competitions, and I ended up winning those through the Junior Chamber of Commerce, the JCs. Many of you are familiar with the JCs.
Yeah, for sure.
And was able to compete at the national level with the JCs. And from there, I started, it's almost like until you have something to say and you're the smartest kid in the room on a certain topic, different topic areas, they're not going to pay you big dollars yet in order for you to come in and speak. But there's a tilt. There's literally an area where it starts to tilt where, oh, you are the smartest guy in the room on that topic. And yeah, now it's worth the money to have you come in and speak to an audience. So the public speaking and the speaking projects that I do today, when I come in and speak at big conferences, right? When I come in and just light up a conference and light up a room, it's going to be dedicated to whatever topic they need. But I still I will, at least at that moment in time, probably be one of the smarter guys in the room because of my background with debate and research, being very well researched in those spaces. So that's how the public speaking side happened. The more interesting story, because if you're going to hit all the different companies, the more interesting one is the photography, right? So because I started at age 14 with a camera, my family was in the Lions Club. If your dads were ever in the Lions Club, right? Yeah. And they did a calendar, the Men About Town calendar. And in that calendar, we made fun of all of the guys' vocations. So instead of, the dentist, a great shot of the dentist, it was him with like a giant drill, and stuff. And so you had to come up with a creative and do all the photography. Long story short, it came out, the calendar came out. The editor of the local newspaper that was about 20 miles away saw that calendar, called the Lions Club and said, who took these photos? And they're like, it's this kid, this 17-year-old kid. She's like, I want to meet him. So I came in, we walked through some photography stuff, and she's like, how would you like to come on as a stringer? We called them stringers back then. Yeah. I said, I think that would be great. She goes, have you ever used a darkroom? I haven't. Great. We'll teach you how to do it. So here I am at age 17, going into 18 years old. I'm understudy with underneath one of the best photographers I've ever worked with, Dave Burdett, R.I.P. And he was awesome. And he ended up teaching me the art of the darkroom and the art of how to do photography at a whole different level. Well, that summer before I left for college, Dave Burdett ends up leaving and going to a bigger newspaper, leaving me the only photographer at this giant newspaper where I'm the only understudy. So for a matter of about 3 months, I was the photographer for this, and they gave me a very generous and a very nice offer to not go to college, to stay there and just be a photographer. I knew I had to go to school. I had to go to college. And so I packed up my resume and my portfolio for photography. I brought it up to Big Rapids, Michigan, and Big Rapids had another newspaper that was the big circulation in Big Rapids. I dropped as an 18-year-old freshman in college. I dropped it on their lap, and the guy who owned the newspaper said, "You're hired today." And so for the next 5 years, that was my college job, was to be the photographer for the entire county and that newspaper. And that's where I really honed in a lot of my skills. Now I'm going to cliffhanger you that you're going to come back to later.
Yes.
But when you're a photographer, I mean, anybody who's listening to this podcast, let me just ask you this, because you could be in your car right now, you could be working out, wherever you're listening to the Hustle Mindset, right? I want you to think about when you open up a newspaper, when you turn on the TV, what is the first thing you see in the news? What is it? What is the first thing you see?
Negativity.
Negativity, tragedy.
Yeah.
Back in the newspaper days, they would say, if it bleeds, it leads. That would be the leading story. If it's bleeding, it leads. And so 80% of my photography life was spent in tragedy. The other 20% was shooting the Red Wings or the Lions or backstage with Def Leppard in the 80s.
Why would you want to do that?
Yeah, why would you want to do any of that stuff, right? You have the wonderful, cool parts of photography. But I'm at every murder. I'm at every suicide. I'm at every single fatal car accident. And in 1993, when I put down my camera for over 23 years, I would never touch a camera again. The last thing I photographed was a 6-year-old girl drowning. And it was in the Muskegon River, and I was there to capture the photo with her mom standing on the side of the river as they're taking the body out. And I thought to myself, as a photographer, this is my best day ever, and I'm about ready to make this woman's worst day of her life. Right? I'm about ready to let the world know about her worst day. And I said, at that point, I'm done. So when I graduated college, I put away the camera and I said I couldn't, because what I couldn't do, guys, I couldn't do what a fireman does and what a police officer does or an EMT. Those are some of our truest heroes, right?
Absolutely.
In our society, they see this tragedy every day, and somehow they have the ability to compartmentalize and put it over here. I couldn't. I never did. I held it right here, and I'm like, I can't do this. So when I graduated, I went and got a big boy job. And my first job, I put away the camera. My first job out of college was the best sales training I ever had. It was with a company called Wallace Computer Services. If you did not know, the show The Office was actually mirrored after Wallace Computer Services.
Is that right?
I sold paper. I sold labels. All of these things. And I'd go out on sales calls. I'd make 70 to 80 sales calls a day, face to face, knocking on doors. It was the best sales training I think I ever had in my life. It was outstanding. But I knew after a couple of years that isn't what I was really called for. And so when I went out and looked at the different opportunities, I came across an opportunity that one of the biggest changes in my life, and it's right up your alley, is I ended up working for and landed a job with a company called Development Dimensions International, DDI. And I ended up working for that company for over 13 years. And they're one of the largest leadership and management training development companies in the world. And I became a master trainer. So now you're combining, your public speaking skills with being a great trainer. And now you're in front of people, training them on how to deal with conflict, right? How to deal with leadership. You're also dealing with how to coach teams and mentor teams and all of those, everything that has to do with leadership, how to give feedback, all of those things, right? So they offered me a job, and I ended up working for that company for quite a few years. I lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan, got active in the community there. And then in 1999, had the opportunity of a lifetime, actually, to go and run the West Coast areas for that company. I got to manage a 5-state area, and I had my choices. I could have lived in Las Vegas, Nevada, Salt Lake City, Utah, or Denver, Colorado. The funny thing is, I had already been to Denver 3 times by the time I was that age, but I'd never went to Denver. I was always up in the mountains skiing. So if you've ever been to Colorado, right? A lot of people who come to Colorado who come skiing have never been to Denver, because they just get on I-70. They go up to the mountains. They look to their left and go, oh, there's Denver. And then they just keep going up to the mountains. So I really had never been to Denver, but at age 29 had the opportunity. And so I moved to Denver at age 29 and worked for that company for many years. And very cool company. I worked with some of the smartest humans that I think that I've ever worked with truly in my life, which has been one of the things that has helped me be successful, is surrounding myself with people who are truly smarter and better than me in many ways. And they had many industrial and organizational psychologists that worked for that company that were just very smart in the worlds of assessment. How do you assess people for a good culture? How do you assess people for the right job? How do you figure out who's the best person to not just hire, but in a succession management world, who's the best person to promote? And it was learning those skills at DDI that would end up helping me with my companies later in life. They also, everyone gets to a point in their career, I think all of us do, when you get a little bit burned out, you get a little bit tired, like you've done this, you've been doing this a while. And that happened to me in the early 2000s. And so I went back to my employer and I said, hey, I either need to take on some either more responsibility, or I need to go back to school. I need to do something to keep the mind spinning. And they gave me that opportunity. And I went to the University of Colorado in Boulder and went through their executive MBA course and got a master's degree from the University of Colorado. Cool. And then a couple years later, now we're in 2006, and that is where I'll stop the story for right now and let you guys ask a question. But right there is the moment that I broke away from corporate America and started the first of my companies.
Excellent.
So you're saying debate and photography is what got you to where you are now?
They certainly were two of the. They certainly were two of the catalysts. They were certainly those things that were important. You know, the weird thing, Chris, was not being able to, truly not even wanting to pick up the camera, because everybody knew you at that point. After 5 years of being a pro, everybody knew you as being a photographer. There wasn't a wedding that you couldn't go to. There wasn't anything that you would you'd look off the side and go, yeah, that photographer's screwing it up. You know, you're at a sporting event, any sporting event with peoples and parents, and you'd be like, yeah, they're positioned wrong on the field. That's not where they're supposed to be. You know, you end up being you're looking at it and going, it's almost that thing. Think about leadership for a moment, guys. Think about the leaders who step in and go, God, you know what? I'm just going to do it for you.
Yeah.
Right? Because they know they can get it done faster. They know it's going to be done right, the way that they want it to get done. Right? And they never empower the other person to get it done. And in my photography world, that ended up being one of the areas that was that I was slightly judgmental watching the other photographers.
It's probably fair, though, if you look at what you do with your social media company or any creative, any artist. They are oftentimes perfectionists because they're so good at their craft, and it's hard not to. I mean, I'm a marketing professional like you, and it's hard not to look at other companies' marketing and not be judgmental at times. And so, yeah, I think you're just right on all those points. But within your company, it is so important to really educate and empower and inspire those people to take that on so that you can be a better leader. Great points on all.
I can remember the point. I literally can almost remember the date and time in the social media company, and I'm happy to share with you how that company was founded. Because it was founded as a mistake. It was an absolute mistake how the entire company got started. But I also remember the day when I ended up not being the smartest guy in the room anymore. You know, you got about 4 or 5 years into the growth of that company. And I can remember the day when I looked around and I'm like, the knowledge level of the sophistication and the technology smarts when it shifted, and I realized, wow, now we're at that point where now we were about even for a while, and then all of a sudden there was this, you know, they could do things that I could never do. And I looked and went, wow. These are just really impressive humans in the company. I remember that, but you know, SME was a really fun company because I'd already started a company before that which was a company that was doing executive search. And you guys know the executive search field, right?
For sure.
So that and if your listeners are listening, it's it's the executive headhunting, right? It's going out and on behalf of companies and finding the hardest to find talent across the world and bringing them and putting them in front of customers and saying, here's the best of the best. And why I loved starting that first company was I had turned that industry upside down. Instead of just doing the recruiting where you go out and find, we'll say that a company's looking for a chief financial officer. Instead of going and finding all of those, I would meet with the client and the customers up front, and I would do the behavioral analysis of their executive team to find out what makes your executive team so unique and so neat to work with them. And I would put behaviors and motivational fit factors into the selection process. So as all of these CFOs were coming in from around the nation, you'd take a slate of 50 people down to 40, down to 30, down to 10, and then we're doing deep dive assessments that I had learned at DDI for 13 years. I would sift those down so that when I would present the finalist candidates to the customer, they were already a behavior fit, culture fit, and they were a great fit for the company. And I always say, be careful what you wish for, because this is
Absolutely.
that's the exact person, right, that I'm going to find for you. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And they would say, well, which one's your favorite? And I'd say, number one's my favorite. Which one's number one? I said, all of them.
Yeah.
I said, you hired me to find, here's 3 or 4 amazing finalist candidates for you. You're not an expert in staffing and selection. I am. So therefore, pick the one you like. Go with your gut feeling. Never doubt a woman's intuition, ever.
Yeah.
He's right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so take these candidates out for dinner. Take them out with their spouses. Go and spend time with them. And then listen to your wife.
Yeah.
Because they were
one of the most impressive things I've heard from you in all of your stories at this point is your kind of lens of continuous learning. When you talk about in each section that you've done, when we talk about like the most successful people, they have this kind of insatiable thirst for knowledge, right? So to your point, you could have went into the executive search business and did it just the way anyone else did it.
Right.
But that kind of thirst for something more, that thirst for knowledge, I think is really, sometimes it's often lost when people talk about, the progress that they've had and the success that they've had. I mean, when you start talking, to Chris's point earlier, whether it be photography, whether it be debate, whether it be, your construction background growing up, I mean, all of those things are just building towards your next thing, which is, ultimately why you're able to do so many different things. I mean, when Chris, kind of laid out your bio, it's like, how do all these things mesh? And it's ultimately just because it just seems like your phase for learning is kind of unending.
Continuous learning is one of the 5 things I look for when we hire people into the company. So when I hire people, we look for what I call the top 5. And notice, guys, these are all things that in the psychology world, in the IO psychology world, we call them non-trainables. So I can't train you on these things. You either have them or you don't. And the past behavior is a perfect predictor of future behavior. So when I ask questions in an interview, I'm asking very specific stories around where I can see these behaviors in action, because what you've done in your past will be very significant and end up being what you do in your future. So
can you break those down for us?
Yep. Tenacity, resilience, energy, impact, and the ability to learn. Tenacity, resilience, energy, impact, and the ability to learn. Those 5 things are the 5 most critical key things that I look for in every team member or everybody that I've hired into the companies. If you've got those 5, I could teach you the technical expertise. That's easy, right? What I can't teach you are those 5 things. And so I look for stories of where you have been incredibly tenacious. I look for stories where you fell hard and you got back up and kept going. There's your resilience. And so I look for stories around each of those 5 areas. And if you could prove to me in an interview that you've got those 5 things, you're already 98% there. Now you got to show me that you're awesome in whatever it is you're doing, whether it's website design, SEO, writing content for social media, working with influencer marketing people, being able to do photography, video. If you're live on site, doing live TikToks, live Instagram, whatever it is. If you're the best at that and you have those 5 things, congratulations, you're pretty much there.
It's excellent.
And I know. I think we only have about 10 minutes left, so I want to focus on what you guys want to focus on.
Well, this has been great,
Luke. I love it. I want to go back to the social media energy company you have. You mentioned that you started that by mistake. I want to hear more about that story.
Yeah, it was absolutely by mistake. Social media energy I never saw that coming, because so I had been, after DDI and after I had started up the executive search firm, which was the first company that I had started, I was still getting called in to help organizations with succession management. How do you identify high potentials inside of companies, put together assessment technology to get them ready for their next level, and then assess them to see who's the best of the best for succession management. I was asked to come in and speak in front of 13 CEOs in Denver, Colorado, for the biggest healthcare. They were all part of the same healthcare group in Colorado. And I had all 13 CEOs in the room, and we were talking about succession management and executive assessment and development. And I got done with the presentation. One of the CEOs says to me, he says, "You started your whole company using LinkedIn and Facebook, didn't you?" Now, keep in mind, guys, do this math in your head. That was 14 years ago. So where were you with social media 14 years ago, right?
It was just a baby
back
then.
I mean, exactly. There's 300 plus million people that use LinkedIn today. I was user 668.
Wow.
Just to give you an example. Right?
Wow.
So they looked at me and said, "You use LinkedIn and Facebook to start your company." And I said, "Yeah, I did." And the CEO says, "Well, what is all that stuff?" And I'm looking around the room at all the CEOs who were north of 55 and just south of 120. And I looked around the room and I said, "You guys want to know what social media is?" And they all nodded. So I hopped up on the whiteboard and I whiteboarded out in real time a complete digital strategy for a $2.8 billion company. And I got done with it. And the CEO over the whole system looks at me and goes, "Well, why don't you just do that for us?" And I said, "Do what?" He's like, "All that stuff you just said you could do." And I said, "I didn't say I could do it. I said, this is what you should be doing."
Yeah.
He goes, "Yeah, we don't have anybody who knows how to do that. Just do it for us." I said, "So we're all on the same page when we walk out the room here. You want to outsource your social media to me like you outsource accounting or IT." He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Let me think about it." So I went and got all of my study guys together from the University of Colorado, from graduate school. Because quite honestly, I could talk those guys into doing anything for me for single malt scotch. And so I had them all together. We pro formed out the entire company. I walked it in to them, and they said, "Yeah, let's do it." I walked out of that. I didn't have a name for the Social Media Energy didn't exist. I didn't have a name for the company. I didn't have a logo. I didn't have an email address or a phone number. I sure as hell didn't have a website. I had nothing. But what I had is what every entrepreneur dreams of having, and that is I had a paying customer with a big name, a big household name.
That's incredible.
And so I don't know if any of your listeners ever get excited about thinking about pricing strategies or understanding how to price things out. But if you could hold on to me for about 2 more minutes, I'll give you the secret of what happened, because every single person who owns a company should hear this part of the story. You don't realize what your value is. Your value is not what you think it is. Your value is what your customers think it is. So I thought, well, this is kind of a cool idea. I wonder if anybody else wants it. So I called up my client, Time Warner Telecom, TW Telecom, and at the vice president of HR, who was my client in the executive search space. I said, "Hey, can you get me a meeting with the head of marketing?" He's like, "Yeah." So I went and sat down with the head of marketing for Time Warner Telecom, but I doubled all of my prices, doubled them. I walked out of that meeting in 30 minutes with a signed contract and thought to myself, they said yes too fast. So I called up the head of human resources for Remax International. Remax corporate headquarters is in Denver.
Yeah.
Said, can you get me a meeting with the head of marketing? Sure can. Got me in with Remax. Doubled my prices again. 45 minutes later, walked out with a signed contract thinking to myself, they said yes too fast.
Yeah.
So I called up Sports Authority, which ended up being purchased by Dick's Sporting Goods. Called up Sports Authority. Hey, can you get me a meeting with the head of marketing? Yep. Doubled my prices again. They came back and said, give us a couple days. We're going to think about it. 4 days later, they called back and said, yep, let's do it. And I'm like, there's my pricing.
What was your rate? Like $40 an hour?
The point of that story for anybody who's an entrepreneur or people who are in marketing and they're thinking about pricing strategies is the value that you bring to an organization is not what you think it is. It's what your customers will bear. And every branding and marketing person who's worth their weight in gold, who understands economics 101, will understand that there's a supply and demand. I was one of the first in the business, so I'm showing you something that's never been done before. I think it's worth this, which is very profitable to me. Ended up being 4 times more profitable than I ever expected it to be. And that's how Social Media Energy started. All of those clients were closed within 6 weeks.
Let's incredible.
Dive deeper into the pricing strategy, because I think that there are a lot of leaders listening to this podcast, entrepreneurs, coaches, solopreneurs, whatever, that would love to get more insight. And I've gone through it myself in a journey. I remember when I left to become an independent consultant, I had a friend who's very successful and had hired a lot of consultants himself. And I said, hey, what do you think I should charge? He's like, well, what do you think you should charge? And I remember saying something like, $60 an hour. And he's like, okay, well, let me do some math in my head. He's like, so are you leaving your job to make the same amount of money? Or are you leaving your job to make more money? And I was like, oh, shit, that's right. Maybe I do need to charge more. And I hear so many of my clients, even big businesses, struggle with, we should charge X because they don't know. So how do you go about determining what is the right price? Because to your point, different clients will pay different rates gladly, and they all might be more than you're willing to charge. But what is that sweet spot? Is it hourly? Because I've heard a lot of people just say my hourly rate's this, but now I'm hearing a lot of people say, don't go hourly, price based on the project.
We do project-based pricing at SMA. This is, if we're really only going to go 45 minutes today, then I better tell you what I actually do for a living. I'll tell you why. But I'll tell you why.
Keep going.
But I'll tell you why. Because the last many, many years, I've been a fractional chief marketing officer. So companies hire me to come in for 5 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours a week at 6-month increments to really give them a huge, boost in their branding. They could go through a rebranding. They could be launching a new product. There's all these reasons why clients bring me in, right? And the reason why I'm spinning this back around to your question around pricing is a lot of times clients will ask me to do an analysis of how they're doing with their pricing. And the first thing I do, Chris, I go out and I set up interviews with their top customers and their top clients. And I find out what the true value is, right? I find out from their perspective who does it better, who they feel the leaders in the marketplace are. So I find out where they're positioned in the mind of their customer and then their client, and then I get into pricing. And I ask, and I have found margin for companies in more places than they ever imagined or ever thought they would imagine. They would find margins. And that's a secret sauce that I have, right? When I have the ability to go in and do what I do and then take that data and turn it into and say, okay, here's how we're going to be pricing that product or that service. A lot of times the services are the most underpriced, just to let you know. products, product companies. I've been able to see margins, but also I've looked at products where products are priced so low because they the bleeding heart business owner who just wants to make good on society and give them what they need. And I look and I go, without margin, there is no mission. If you want to know what sign is in my bathroom, up on the window, up on the mirror, without margin, there is no mission.
Mm-hmm.
So you can try and give that product away or make just enough to just get by. But at the end of the day, that mission goes away if you're not making money. The purpose of business is to maximize the profitability of the person who started the company. Or in many cases, it's the people who invested in the company, right? And so when you think about pricing, Chris, I'm when I'm doing my fractional CMO work, I'm an hourly rate. That's an hourly rate. And you want more of me, you buy more hours. Usually if someone's bought 10 hours and you see what I can do after a couple months in 10 hours, they want more. They go to 15.
I bet.
Right?
Yeah.
But never if I gone the other way. It's never been, by this much and you back that up. At Social Media Energy, we did a very good job of doing a cost analysis of what all of our costs are that are involved in running a social media project for a customer and a client, where we're writing all the content, creating all of the graphics, doing all the photography, that we're making them look amazing in a digital space without them having to have a team of people to do it. It's all managed and run by our team. So if you know what the costs are for every single one of those, you've built in your profitability on top of that. Right there is where your price level is for those. And business owners have to be okay with saying no. You must not be our target market. If that number seems, we budgeted $800, per month to do social media. And I said, well, put a 2 in front of that, and that's where we start talking. Right? Right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to know who your target market is and where the value is, because obviously someone who thinks they're going to spend $800 a month on their digital and social media is not serious whatsoever. I mean, companies that are not even putting in $1,500 to $2,000 on their Google Analytics for keyword searchability, always, how much do you spend on that per month? $200 to $300. Oh, okay. You're not serious. Mm-hmm. You're not serious about driving traffic. If that is your goal, you wouldn't believe how many people actually try and drive so much traffic to their website. They're all worried about SEO. They're all worried about driving, people to their website. And I'm like, how many leads did you get from your website last year? None. Why? Because we have an outside sales force. Wow. Really? I've got a lot of other ways to spend your money more wisely instead of what it is you're trying to do.
For sure.
So, sometimes when they bring in someone like me, I'm holding the mirror up right to them and saying, wow, let's just look at what this really looks like.
Is that hard for you to say no to a client when they're not willing to pay your price? Coming from someone who said yes to so many things in life, from photography to different businesses, debate club, et cetera, et cetera.
Chris, there were 6 companies that started in the social media world the same year I did, in 2009. None of those companies are in business today, except for mine.
That's amazing.
When you try to be all things for all people, that is the downfall of your business already. You need to know exactly who your target market is. You need to know exactly what you're trying to go after, and you do not sacrifice margins. When you sacrifice margins is how companies go out of business. It's when they've lost their ability to generate the revenues that they need in order to do that. That is when those. So I could say I felt bad for some of them. I do remember the day when the company got big enough that we could take on, that we started a whole not-for-profit pricing model just for not-for-profits, right? Mm-hmm. that the company was already making enough margin over here that we could take less margin just for not-for-profits, but only the ones that we were passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
But we had to say no to a lot of companies. There's a lot of people who need what we do, but you also don't need Indy car to take your kid to kindergarten either. The car that's in your garage, the Toyota Corolla, will get the kid there just fine.
Yeah.
I'll go back to price for a moment because I'll say this: not only can you hurt your margins by being inadequately priced, but what does it say about your service? What is the brand you're creating by being 20% cheaper than most of your competitors or the median industry price? I would say that alone sets the expectation. Well, don't expect the moon and the stars, just expect average, because you're charging an average to below average price. So that to me can speak volumes about your company, whether it's true or not.
I struggle with a client right now who their product is priced below the gorilla, the 900-pound gorilla that's out there, but yet their machine is so much better. And I think to myself, if I were the owner of that company, I would price 10 to 20% over the 900-pound gorilla and win and sell lesser machines with bigger margins, and then gain more market share, and do that and be okay with not having as many sales, with much higher margins, because now you're placing the value in the customer's head instead of going, well, there's this 10 or 20% less. So if that's your sales strategy, okay, I get it. I see where you're going with that. You're not the lowest priced, you're not the highest priced. You just want to be just underneath. And I get it. I understand that's kind of what it's worked, but I think that there's many other ways to build value and build brand around your pricing strategy that I think are very important.
Do you think it's fair that when you have customers that are willing to pay a premium price, there's typically less headaches and issues associated with the customers that want to beat you down and pay an inferior, low quality price?
We've never done an RFP, Chris. Hey, Dustin, I don't know if you heard that. Let me repeat it. We've never done an RFP. You know what I do? I send people. Everybody wants us to bid on all of these projects. I send the same thing back to every single one of them. Thank you so much. We appreciate the fact that you would include Social Media Energy as part of your short list of people that you've decided to send this RFP to. It is the view of the owners of this company that RFPs are outstanding for products like toilet paper. I send the same thing back every single time, tongue in cheek, in your face.
Yep.
We are a value-based business of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to get the best price, we're not your company.
100%.
We stood by that. Do you know how many piece of business we've won because of my sarcasm?
Mm-hmm.
People would come back and go, no, seriously, we wanted you. I said, no, if you wanted us, you would invite me in to meet your entire executive team. We'd sit down and shake hands like businessmen and women, and we'll form a relationship, and then you will love my company.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we're going to work.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
You're going to put things on a spreadsheet, pick the lowest number, and say, "Did my job."
Mm-hmm.
No, you didn't.
Sorry, we're not part of that game. I'll eat up my profit margin just filling out your paperwork. We're not a paperwork company. We're a digital company.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
Yep.
There you go.
Dropping bombs. Oh, that was amazing. Luke, I would love to continue this conversation. We could easily take this into hour 2 or 3. But
Volume 2 coming, everyone. Volume 2.
We're going to do it. I'm going to send an invite. We will make Volume 2 happen sometime this summer. That was amazing.
And the title of that one, Chris, will be How to Fire Yourself.
I'm already interested.
There you go. There's your cliffhanger.
Boom. Luke, tell us a little bit more about where people can find you and what you have going on. Anything coming up?
Yeah, I've got a couple of really nice speeches, keynote speeches this summer, and that's just my name, LukeWyckoff.com. But if you don't spell Wyckoff right, you're completely off. It's Wyckoff. That's where people find me for the keynote speeches. The work that I'm doing with my fractional chief marketing officer work, that's just Wyckoff Consulting. It's not a hard one to remember. But that's where people can find me. They can always call my cell phone, 303-638-0050. All great ways to get a hold of me. Best way, if you really want to impress me, get a hold of me, connect with me on a personal note on LinkedIn. Stop hitting the connect button. If I don't know you, I deny you. I deny your friendship, your digital friendship. You send me a real note on LinkedIn. That's where a lot of people will find me and connect with me. They'll read my articles on LinkedIn, or they'll see the different things that I publish. The photography that I do now, which we'll get to in a whole nother day, I do it for free. I do it for friends and family. And when people ask how they can pay, I ask them to make a donation to their favorite charity. Just go give the money you give to me. Give that to your favorite charity. Because my job with the camera the rest of my life is to just bring absolute beauty to this world. No more tragedy.
And that's one thing we didn't get to. You are a true philanthropist, which I think goes back to the family business, the debate team, the photography, all those things that you had growing up as a kid. And that's a big part of who you are, being a philanthropist. I love it. And obviously a big part of your success, no doubt.
And that came from my grandparents and my father, who, when you invest in the community will invest in you.
Those are great parting words. With that, we thank you so much, Luke. That was an amazing conversation. Volume 2 coming this summer, no doubt. For all of our listeners, thank you for your ears, downloads, reviews. We sincerely appreciate your time. Until next time, peace.
Thank you for being part of the Hustle Nation. If you're serious about raising the bar in your personal and professional life and willing to go all in on your success, head over to hustleleaders.com. Here you can get access to our Hustle Productivity ebook, attend our Hustle Masterclass, or challenge yourself to the 30-day Hustle Challenge. Pairing these tools and training with the Hustle Nation podcast will help you advance to a whole new level. Until next time, stay hungry and inspire those around you to hustle.